Now, at the time of making this video, we're about a week away from the release of The Rise of Skywalker, a movie that even those behind its creation, like J.J. Abrams, are predicting will send some ripples, if not shockwaves, through the fanbase, saying how some of the decisions they've made with this movie may feel controversial to some, and that they may take issue with new force powers introduced. And if you've read or kept up with the leaks and rumors, which I'll get to in a bit, you'll likely agree this movie is going to anger and or disappoint some fans. Also they, meaning Abrams and company, seem to be getting rather defensive about their decision to include Palpatine in this movie, saying how it was not only the plan all along, but that it wouldn't feel right to not have him in there considering how important he was to the previous two trilogies, even though he very much seemed to die in Episode 6, and as far as I can tell, there hasn't been any sort of hint about his return in either of the previous two movies in this trilogy, and that Snoke seemed primed to be the main villain of the whole trilogy, until he was killed off. And speaking of that, there also seems to be a bit of blame or maybe frustration thrown the way of Rian Johnson by J.J. Abrams, with him saying in a recent interview with the New York Times that although the movie, meaning The Last Jedi, was full of surprises and subversion and all sorts of bold choices, on the other hand, it's a bit of a meta approach to the story. I don't think that people go to Star Wars to be told, this doesn't matter. And quite honestly, it's one of the simplest yet best ways to sum up what I think didn't work for a lot of people about that movie. And kind of backing that up, there's also what John Boyega recently said in an interview with Hyperbeast that The Force Awakens, I think, was the beginning of something quite solid. The Last Jedi, if I'm being honest, I'd say that was feeling a bit iffy for me. I don't necessarily agree with a lot of the choices in that, and that's something that I spoke to Mark Hamill a lot about, and we had conversations about it, and it was hard for all of us because we were separated. Boyega then went on to say in that same interview that he'd only ever return to Star Wars if it kept with the more traditional themes, saying the banter, the bickering, the undercover romances that then manifest an epic moment. That's Star Wars for me. It's not hyper-real or realistic or grounded. Don't do any of that. It's the connections, family, friendship. If they're going to go in that direction, then absolutely. And on a bit of a side note here, of course John Boyega took some heat for those comments, because it's not like literally playing a character in the story allows you to express your opinions on the story or character you're playing. It's not like Finn might personally mean something to the actor who plays him. It's not like he's going to have people randomly coming up to him and calling him Finn for the rest of his life, not out of disrespect or because they don't know his real name, but because he played a character that also means, or could have meant depending on your point of view, a lot to other people as well. Anyway, I think both Boyega and Abrams are absolutely right. There was something that just felt off about The Last Jedi. It felt way too meta. The only expectations that were really subverted were of those the audience, not really anyone in the story itself. I mean, think about the big Darth Vader is Luke's father reveal in The Empire Strikes Back. Luke was just as shocked and horrified as we all were to learn the truth. And though sure, Rey was surprised when Luke tossed away the saber at the start of the movie, she sure as hell wasn't surprised or stunned as we all were. And later in the movie, she was actually the one who confesses her parents were nobody. It was something she had apparently known all along, yet it's played like it should be a huge surprise for the character, when it's really just a surprise for us watching. Again, all the twists and turns in that movie were for the audience, not the characters in the story. And as shocked as we all were the first time we saw that movie and had our expectations subverted, imagine how surprised J.J. Abrams was with that movie and to see what direction the story he had started with The Force Awakens had been taken in. And he even said that when he read the script for Episode 8 the first time, he laughed when Snoke was killed, and that he was surprised with just how dark Luke Skywalker was. Which could be interpreted as more little shots at Rian Johnson and his movie and how subtly Abrams is trying to separate himself and his new movie from Johnson and The Last Jedi, to begin to place the blame for any problems with The Rise of Skywalker, or that fans will ultimately have with it, on the guy who made the last movie and left the story at basically a dead end. Okay, now this is where we're going to move into potential spoiler territory and discuss the leaks a little bit. So if you don't want anything about Episode 9 potentially ruined, it's a really good time to stop the video. Anyway, that said, I'm not going to go play by play through the leaks. Plenty of other videos have done that already, I'm sure, and you can always go to Reddit and look up Jedi Paxis and read them all for yourself. And though we're not going to know for certain how true or accurate they are until the movie finally comes out and proves or disproves them, things like a dagger showing up in a commercial or spoilers being dropped by the Swedish MPAA the organization that rates movies over there, do align with what the leaks have been saying for a while now. So what I'm going to quickly do here, again instead of going through all of the leaks, is see how they address the 3 things that I think are the most important things this final movie must do, which is something I made a video about a little while back, and I'll link it in the description below if you want to check it out. In summary, they are: give a good reason for Palpatine's return, have Anakin Skywalker return and be a part of the final defeat of Palpatine somehow, and humble Rey a bit and do something truly interesting with her character. Okay, so first of all, we're not going to get much of an explanation for the return of Palpatine. He's apparently not so much alive as he is a corpse puppet, as it was described, and he's hooked up to several different machines that kind of animate him and keep him alive to some extent, and that he speaks through his spirit or something, not his actual body. In other words, it sounds like, yes, he did actually die in Return of the Jedi, but that somehow his body was found intact and kept alive to some extent, and they're looking for a way to bring him back full force, no pun intended, which is why he needs Rey to suck out her essence, essentially. And this means, in a way, Anakin did still kill Palpatine and bring balance to the Force at the end of Return of the Jedi, sort of. I mean, how Palpatine's body wasn't blown apart when the second Death Star exploded, if not just plain vaporized, is a very interesting question. Maybe after he got tossed down the shaft, he encased himself in dark side energy and kind of survived the explosion that way, and the vacuum of space afterwards, until he was found some way by somebody. I don't know, I'm not trying to write the movie for them or justify his return, just saying I guess you could explain it, not that the movie apparently tries to from what the leaks say. And even though J.J. Abrams has gone on and on about justifying the return of Palpatine and saying how could they ever finish the overall story without him, without the villain who started it all, of course, apparently we can finish the story without the hero who started it all, because according to these leaks, Anakin Skywalker will not be in this movie in any capacity, not even his voice. And, you know, why would Anakin be in it anyway? It's not like he's an immortal Force ghost or anything, or that the guy who turned back to the light side to save his son would care to show up to now help save his grandson. But don't worry, Han Solo is going to appear to Kylo Ren at one point, after Rey stabs and seems to kill Kylo Ren, but then heals him and brings him back to life or something. And this will happen during their battle on the second Death Star that we've seen in all the trailers and commercials and such. Anyway, Han just appears there as if alive still. No explanation given, and maybe, hopefully, this is just a hallucination Kylo Ren is having. They then have a quick talk that mirrors the one they had in The Force Awakens, but this time when Kylo Ren says, "I know what I have to do, but I don't know if I have the strength to do it," he tosses his lightsaber away and into the water. As for my third big concern, how will Rey be handled? Well, apparently she is going to be darker and angrier in this movie, that she will be tempted by the dark side, but ultimately she resists it and will get the win in the end by blocking Palpatine's lightning with 2 sabers and pushing it back or reflecting it back at him and killing him, but that she also dies in the process. But never fear, Kylo, or Ben at this point, will emerge from a pit he was pushed into by Palpatine, and he gives his life to save Rey, literally giving his life force or something. And there's a kiss between the two of them before he dies to stop all the Reylo fans from rioting in the streets after the movie. That's just a little joke, relax Reylo fans. Then Rey goes to Tatooine at the very end for some reason, back to the original Lars homestead to bury the lightsaber, I guess, apparently Leia's lightsaber, I think. And while she's there, someone asks her what her name is, and she replies, Rey Skywalker, as Luke and Leia, in Force Ghost form, look on. Then the credits roll, and the Skywalker saga ends once again, for now. Okay, so assuming these leaks are accurate, which they may not be, the biggest disappointment for me is no Anakin Skywalker. I don't understand how you think bringing Palpatine back is so crucial to the story, but that not even a glimpse at the Force ghost of Anakin frickin' Skywalker is necessary in the last movie of the Skywalker saga. And my frustration with him not being in there will, if true, only be compounded by a lack of explanation for Palpatine's return. I mean, maybe neither one of these things are important to you personally, which is fine if they're not, but to me, they are crucial. It's crucial that undoing the previous ending that Return of the Jedi once gave us, which I think was damn near perfect, is explained and still respected. Because it sounds like at the end of this new trilogy, we're just going to be in the exact same place we were when Return of the Jedi ended, with Palpatine once again dealt with and gone for good, and one lone Jedi to rebuild the Order and a new Republic ready to reform. Which is fitting, I guess, since The Force Awakens took us back to the same place we were in A New Hope. In other words, what was the point of this trilogy? All it seems to do is tell the exact same story all over again. And look, I certainly don't want to pass any sort of final judgment on this movie until after I've seen it. Again, these leaks could be dead wrong, not to mention it could play out on the big screen better than it reads on a computer screen. Not that there isn't some good here to be had, especially when you consider what J.J. Abrams had to work with after The Last Jedi. As I've said before, I don't think JJ's original plan, no matter what he says, was to kill off Snoke. I think he was going to be something new and different at the very least, and that he was meant to be the overarching villain of this trilogy. But with him gone, JJ was forced to go back to Palpatine, though I'd argue Plagueis would have been a better choice, and actually, he could have tied the three trilogies together better than even The Return of Palpatine does. Well, that's all I've got for this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you think of all of this. Is J.J. Abrams subtly setting up Rian Johnson to take the blame if The Rise of Skywalker is controversial and not warmly welcomed by the fans? Do you think these leaks are true? And if so, what do you think of them? Or are you trying not to think of them? Whatever the case may be, leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.